Welcome to Non-Perishable Goods Podcast.
Hello, hello.
And hello. So it's election season. And recently, not too recent, in 2022, Roe versus Wade has been overturned. And that has been a law that's been it's been a law since 1973, which has given people or women the right, abortion rights, the right to choose for themselves if they would like to have an abortion or not. So it was recently overturned. And so now basically we don't have those rights anymore. It's left up to each state to decide how they are going to allow women to either have abortions or not.
Yeah, it's a
So,
scary time. I remember the day pretty vividly because it was a big news day, obviously for us, right? Like
mhm.
especially in California, where um, we're more of a free thinking state, in a lot of ways. And I know we get chastised for things. I know our governor gets chastised for things. There's a lot of stupidity that goes on in our state, a lot of misappropriation of laws, letter of the laws, and even like monies, right? Like when it comes to budgeting and what are these measures and so on and such. And I think we discussed it about 3 weeks ago when we were just talking about the election stuff and, you know, kind of where I usually am at on it. Like I'm more, micro as opposed to the macro side of things. I don't think California will ever go away with it just because such a progressive state.
Right.
But I think
We lead on everything. We lead
yeah,
on everything that's like kind of new age, progressive, non-traditional.
yeah, and that's kind of it goes back to like what we've talked about in like episodes past, right? Like when you go back east, it's very, very different than it is out here. And the way that people think and the way that monies are and just different little things of that nature. You know, this one's a big one,
Yeah,
right? This one's a
it
big one.
is. It is
It,
a big one.
talking about someone's human birthright to pick and choose what they want to do with their own bodies. And, you
Yeah.
know, I always go back to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or even in thought process, but I always go back to how the separation of church and state. And I think we learned, I think in fifth grade, that was usually the curriculum was learning the separation of church and state and U.S. history and the government part. And then you got it a little bit later, obviously in life, in high school. And if you have that type of minor or major in college, you can really delve into it. But I just feel like I would never want to be a person to tell you as a woman what you can and cannot do.
And that's
Uh,
what they're doing. That's what especially, if Republicans, conservatives get into office, that's what they want to do. They want to mandate abortion or no abortion rights federally.
mm,
They're not leaving it up to the states. They want to have a federal ban. And it's a scary time. And I just found it kind of interesting because, we're Christians and a lot, we're not a monolith, but there's a lot of people who are on the far right who believe that abortions are wrong, but on religious standings. But what I found to be kind of interesting is that there's other groups like within the conservative party that it's not just religious. Like they really believe in like the sanctity of life. They believe that murder is murder. Like it really kind of opened up my mind to like, wow, there's so many different views from people on this topic. Like it's very personal for everyone and it's very different for everyone. But I did also find that like 62% of Americans believe that we should have some form of abortion rights for
yeah,
different reasons, which
and
I thought was kind of cool.
I think that there are different reasons. There's reasons that we have the ability to um, know if a child has Down syndrome in the sac. and
We have
before
the science. Yeah, we
yeah,
have the science now.
we have the technology to really boast and bode well for young men and women's mental health and their physical stature and health too. And again, that's why I really am a blessed man having two children, 23 and 21, who have really no obviously physical ailments or derailments with their births and things like that. Just you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And one of the
because
things,
oh, sorry.
no, it's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'm very like pro-choice, but I I now see like after I've heard different perspectives on the pro-life argument, like having a child is a big deal, and it's a blessing when your child is healthy, you
Yeah,
know?
I think sometimes it's one of those, I don't like to say de facto like things like when you see a pregnant woman or if you have somebody in your life that's pregnant and you're just like, oh, we're praying for your health. And obviously it sounds kind of cliche, but like in actuality, like, depending upon the person, like the kind of person I am, I'm really truly putting you in my prayers that you do have a
Mhm.
healthy pregnancy and that more importantly through that pregnancy, if you're in a relationship, that relationship stays healthy too, because it throws a whole completely different dynamic into relationships, when a son or a daughter are born. I just think we have so many different things now going on, and it might be a topic for a show later, but like I'm still learning, all the pronouns and all of these different things, the non-binaries,
Yeah.
the transgender communities and things of that nature. I try to pray for everybody in that capacity just because I don't believe in it doesn't mean that it makes it right or wrong. It's just not my moralistic belief about certain things. I believe in man and woman. My sister's gay. I love her to death. I love her wife. I love their kids. And that's my baby sister, and so like if she was to have something happen to her earlier in life before she was with her now wife and didn't want a kid, I would be 150% supportive of her not wanting that kid, especially if the dynamics of her finances, living conditions, work, career, is she in school? I'm a person that had kids in college, very early at 18 and a half, 19 years old. I'm a dad, and I will never take that away from you know what I've experienced, but I also know that especially my first one, it was a topic, right? It was a topic of do we keep this child, and she was hell bent on keeping him. And even in that moment, it's like, well, I can't really say anything because it is her choice, and I
Mm.
think as I've gotten older, I've understood it a little bit more, um, to where there are people that do need it. And unfortunately, mandating it or governing it in a sense where you're not really thinking about everybody involved, you're just thinking about, and I feel like a lot of politicians think this way, is they think about it in a totality sense, not an individual sense. Like, because each person is going through something individually, and we're not taking in the human, the human aspect of these decisions.
Yeah.
Um,
Because, like, for me, like, how do you feel like it's your responsibility, or what, how is somebody else's life and their choices your responsibility? Like, I just can't really get that. Like, if you're not into this or that, then you don't do it for yourself,
mhm.
you know? Because I kind of relate it to free will. Like, everything I do is based on my faith, and I look at these kind of things as free will and keeping society civil. So if majority of the people want to have these rights,
Mhm.
then why would you take that away? Why would you want to take that away?
Go back to last week's conversation is are these people really for the people? And you're supposed to be, and there's an oath that you take when you take office, or you're a person in legislation or Senate or Congress or the president or vice president, treasurer, all of these different lineages that are in our judicial and our hierarchy systems of running a government, state and federal. um I think they lose sight of the human aspect a lot. I think a lot of the things that are on dockets all the time don't necessarily glean human, being human.
Yeah.
And taking away abortion for me, I feel like is wrong. And this is just a personal kind of deal because if I look at it from even a professional view lens, I still think it's wrong too because again, we're the land of the free. So it's hypocrisy at its finest, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, the whole liberty and individual liberties,
Yeah.
but only in certain things. Like when it comes to women's bodies, then they're like, nah, we're imposing our beliefs and our morals onto others.
And how dare myself or any other man for that matter, right? A man telling a woman who is the one who's providing life. Both people provide life, right? But they're the ones who bear that life. I can't tell you what to do, Stacey. Like if we were sitting in a healthy, committed relationship, and it just so happens, and a lot of this happens, especially with our generation. A lot of our kids were not planned like our parents, who are boomers, considerably. Some people are, and I think even in my friends group, like some people have done that, like they've planned their children, and most of my friends, we had very unplanned children in this whole thing. And so I know that this was a topic with them, and so it was a talk. I know it was a topic with me and my two sons' mothers. And I think that it's hard. It really,
Yeah.
really is hard to like sit here and tell somebody that they have to do something when it's their body, and if they so choose to not want to have a child. And here's the flip side, or the devil's advocate part is that I can hear a conservative voice just ringing now, even talking about it. Well, they did the deed, or I don't even want to say that that's their accent or whatnot, but I can hear that, right? And
Right.
that's what you see a lot of times is people on TV talking about it. They have those initial, I don't like to say Southern beliefs, but like just very conservative level
Traditional. Yeah.
traditional beliefs about, okay, well, if you do the deed, you gotta, it
But
is.
I don't even think they are doing that, because a lot of because I was looking at the stats and most of the abortions are with people in their 20s. It's like 57%.
That's a
And
time of life that you're not necessarily ready
right.
to have a child and to
But you're having sex.
yeah.
You're gonna have sex. Unless you're like a devout person who is really like into abstinence and the chastity belts and all that. But they're still messing around.
Oh, for
There's
sure.
you know what I mean?
I think that we would be naive to think that this is still 1992 or 88 or even the early 2000s. I think sex culture is a big thing.
It's
I,
everywhere.
it's
Mhm.
everywhere. It's what sells. It's what we saw. I think like we are the generation that grew up kind of having things sexualized to us. So sex is going to happen. Relationships outside of relationships, not being in a relationship, but hookup culture, all of these different nuances of sexual behavior obviously do lead to slip ups and getting pregnant. And if I looked across the way on a one night stand and I'm like, hell no, there's no way. I don't know this person. Two, I don't know that their mental and physical and health backgrounds and different things of that nature. Am I literally, and again, it all goes into decision making, right? And so,
Yeah.
like with these types of laws, I feel like you're trying to do something that is not natural, right? It's not natural evolution. It's not natural to not like natural selection process of who is to have and who isn't to not have. Like if we have these things in place, obviously we have the science, we have the medical paralysis to actually do all of these things and have these things. Well, there are people that abuse every system. There's people that abuse the welfare system. There's people that abuse the housing system. There's all these different things that sometimes I feel like aren't monitored or monetized in a sense, as opposed to Roe v. Wade. And I'm just in the light of practicing, humanality, like being a good human, right? And me being a good human to you as your neighbor biblically is I'm not to tell you what to do. I can only show you or guide you in the light that I feel God is putting me through, and kind of what I do on a daily basis, right? Like we talked about it, post production last week. It's like there's certain habits and rituals that I have in my life that maybe inspire you, or maybe you might roll your eyes on it, but that's your natural selection choice to have those emotions or feelings about what I'm doing. But what I'm doing is I'm not trying to impress you. I'm not trying to impede on you. This is just what I do every day. And if you so happen to pick up on some positivity that I may be bringing out in the world, or even a viewpoint in the world, that still is your choice.
Right. Yeah,
You
no, it's definitely people's choices, but I kind of see like conservatives how, they don't want people to use abortion as a form of contraceptive.
contraception.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I get that. I
but I think that's a very broad, stereotypical viewpoint, though, because again, you have plan Bs, you have these different nuances, you have uh, all sorts of contraceptives that can
IUDs.
work. Yeah, the IUDs, the pills, the shots. And that has kept a lot of women, just whom I know, not pregnant, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, um, I think the education portion of it is to educate women and men, because I feel like the education of the male is very lost in all of this. I think it's still in 2024 a very Neanderthalic thought process or ideology of how men are to court a woman or have sex with a woman or be the dad, and these things lead to all the things that I even experienced with child support, with custody battles, mediations, hearings, like all the things that I went through personally in those systems is why abortion is a choice, right? And like if she would have chose my first son's mom, if she would have chose not to have Isaiah, it would have, I love my child, but in hindsight, if I look at it from a reality standpoint, right, if this is just a hypothetical reality, is if she had chose to have the abortion and I don't have my first son, it would have created a lot of less anguish in my life as far as dealing with her, not my child, though,
Right,
right?
right, right.
It would have just been a situationship or a relationship, and then we move past that, and there's no child involved. There's no mediation every 6 months. I mean, literally from the time he was 8 months old, it was every 6 months up until about age 17 that I was consistently fighting for my child and time with my child without having to outpour or pay or have a levy or a dean thing from a judge that doesn't even know me. So like
Right.
those types of things are a part of all of that, right? And I
Yeah.
just believe in, it's a natural selection process through God and what he feels covenant into someone else's life. I'm forever grateful that she didn't have an abortion. I'm because I have to look at things that I've gone through as gifts, not just my son being the gift, but the things that I had to go through during that time. I had to learn to slow,
Yeah.
slow to anger and be patient and, just continue to stay on my ones and my twos, and their motivation to make money and to give them a comfortable life and get the vacation and the Christmas gifts and just being there. Like I always erred on the side of, I love my profession because it allowed me my mornings, pretty much my entirety of the day that normally people are at work. I could be at the school. I could go on the field trips. I could take time off to go and, bring them their homework if they left it on the counter. Like I had all of those types of freedoms, obviously because of my career path and choice, which is a choice as well. But if I had had an 8 to 5, a 9 to 5, or even some type of crazy job where I'm working nights. Like I know a lot of people who work nights and sleep throughout the entirety of the day. And the only time they're seeing their families are really when they get home from school in passing or at a sporting event. And so, not to give women or men that choice, I've always felt like, yes, I don't have a choice here, but like I would rather you still have the choice as a woman, right? Like as much as I would want to have a say so in a child coming into this world or not, like I still never want to take that away from a woman.
Yeah, I hear you. And but I don't know. It all does come down to like that traditional stance.
Mhm.
But most people in this life, I just saw somebody talking the other day, like, you got to have sex on the first night. And it's just like we're in that society where people aren't making these life-changing decisions with all the appropriate information, I guess you would
I
say.
think that
Like
that's
they're just
a microcosm of what we're dealing with, right? Like if
right.
you're on your phone right now, you have access to so much information at your fingertips, and it comes up lightning fast. It's not we're not dialing in to access information. We're literally opening the phone with a face scanner, tapping a DoorDash app or a Snapchat filter or a Bumble or whatever it is that you're on, and you have instant gratification access. And I put the instant gratification first because you're being satisfied before you actually even hit what you wanted to do
Right.
because
But sexually,
yeah.
yeah. But in our society, I think sex is at the forefront of every human interaction. And there's consequences for that. And just from like what you've said, but I also believe I'm just gathering things that you've said. Everything works together for good. We may have make bad decisions, but if you let them play out, they always turn out.
Well, it's like the devotional I read today. It was about, we as humans, we generally dread things that we don't want to do, right? And it's such a great reminder of like if I change my perspective or I change my outlook on how I view everyday life, like whatever I'm doing in that day, I don't look at it as a negative. Like I have practice tonight at 7. Ugh. If I do that, I've already put a negative connotation at the time frame of 7 o'clock in a facility or outside. And my attitude's going to be different towards those types of things, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to saying, 7 o'clock practice. Just saying it that way kind of fires you. It should fire you up. It should give you some sort of excitement. It should give you some sort of, you know,
Yeah. Like you
positive.
get to do it. Like I get to go out and go to practice.
And I think that it was such a devastating thing and a devastating time to read a lot of women that I know, that personally I know, that and on my timeline, their displeasure, their sadness, their, just the way that they took that news was it was disheartening, you
Yeah.
know, and
It is disheartening. And I kind of, like I said, I think in one of the other shows that a lot of these laws don't affect me as an individual so much. And now that I'm up in age, it doesn't really, you know, pregnancy is not an issue that I'll be having. Most likely, I'm sure everything's fine if I wanted to go that route.
you never know what God has in store for you, right? And let's look at it from a standpoint of, let's say you meet your significant other, right? And you decide you want to adopt or have a surrogate or different things of that nature.
Yeah, you could go that route for sure.
Let's say you
But
have a girl though,
the
right?
what?
Let's say you have a girl. Let's say a girl comes into the world with you and your partner, or even just yourself, because there's so many different ways, obviously, to have a child, right? And don't you want her to have her best foot forward on being a forward-thinking woman in today's world and in the world that you're trying to make a better place? I always go back to that Quincy Jones song. It's like, how are we making this world a better place? And I feel like with a lot of what we've been dealing with since Trump came into office is just a lot of backwards thinking. And it's not like you can be progressive all you want, but if you don't have a foundation of your progression or your progressive thought process, then those are just ideas. those ideas are never going to come to fruition because they're just radical ideas. So a lot of times when you're hearing people think or talk, sometimes articulately, sometimes not articulately, but it's scary because it's like, okay, there's no foundational piece as to why you're progressively thinking this way. Like I would never want to take that out of a woman's hands. That's not my decision. That we're playing God on paper.
Yeah. And I mean, what I was trying to say is like, whatever the laws are, I just kind of roll with it. It may put on my mind to be more responsible when I'm going out there to have sex with others. Like, use condoms,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe be celibate. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like to avoid putting myself in these situations where I would need some kind of abortion.
Yeah.
Um,
And it
you
comes
know,
down to
so
emotional and physical discipline, right?
right. And
You
maybe
know,
we should look at that. Like when these
yeah.
certain laws come into place, it makes me think, okay, well, maybe I should change my ways in this order or fashion. But let me tell you, I am pro-choice. I'm absolutely pro-choice. But I just think some of these things that are happening, and as a Christian, we're supposed to respect the laws that are in place,
Mm-hmm.
respect authority and all those different things. So it's like it just makes me look at my decisions better, or to avoid these consequences.
Yeah.
But the other thing is when you're young, you don't think like this. Because like people at my age, they're not having abortions. It's like at 4% or 8%, in the 40-year-old range. But there's a lot more when you're younger because you're just out here having sex and having fun and you're keeping it a secret from your friends, your family, your grandma. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't even you can you need abortion because you don't want to ruin your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a secret. You shouldn't be having sex, or you're not supposedly supposed to be having sex, but in reality, young kids are
Yeah,
having
a
sex.
lot of times it comes into how was that person raised, and like I love how our series of shows has been because these things all kind of flowed together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like your decision here is going to affect your decision here. And if you don't have strong leadership in the home or in your mentors' lives, your mentorship lives, and just the people that you're surrounded with, you're not going to have a fundamental foundational piece on those types of things,
Yeah.
and be
But
able
then
to.
some people also tell you, oh, they want to live out their own experiences and they don't necessarily listen to a mentor. But me thinking about when I was younger growing up, I didn't really have people tell me don't have sex, you know? Like it was almost like an encouragement, or because my mom, she wanted grandbabies, because I think grandparents, there's a lot of people who have the school of thought who want traditional families
You
and
got to remember too, your parents are in that boomer generation of the 2.5 kids with the house, the picket fence, the dog. Like that was the American dream. That
well,
was
in
what
my mom's side of the family, she had 8 siblings.
my
So
dad
they really love family.
as the oldest of nine.
Yeah,
You And
exactly.
so like you see these bigger families with your aunts, uncles, your parents, their parents, my grandmom's was like 11, what I
Mhm.
mean? Great aunts and uncles and things like that. So like the days of the big families are very obsolete in a sense. I think
Mhm.
we ostracize those that do have more than 5, 6 kids in a home, and we look at them crazy. And those are those families' beliefs. And I
Especially if they can't afford it, I feel like they're judged,
for
you
sure,
know, you
for,
know.
I mean, I was lucky enough to just have two. Um, I think overall, like from a personal standpoint, maybe 3 or 4 if things in my personal life would have worked out the way that I wish they would have or can moving
Mhm.
forward. Because obviously being a man, I mean, Robert De Niro just had a kid last year. I mean, that dude
Yeah.
in the 80s. So, I mean, you can do all of these types of things. I just feel for the woman's side of things because you guys are the forefront of men's decisions
Mhm.
overall, because you look at the numbers in these legislative branches and it's predominantly men.
Yeah.
Why?
They've been wanting to control women forever. Like we literally just got our rights in like 1964, 1970, 1990s. Like women couldn't even get mortgage loans, I heard, until like the 90s by themselves.
Yeah, by themselves. Yeah.
So it's like men, there's also that factor, that school of thought where men want to control women still. And this is like a way for them to control women. Like they don't want us to have the right to say, oh, we don't want to have your child.
Hmm.
You know, like it's
I think
really deep.
it is deep. It's so deep because we really have to delve into each individual. And so again, your individual liberties and your individual freedoms of being, here in the United States of America are very much tested in hypocrisy.
Yes. Because how do we have individual freedom, to have your guns and, they don't want to wear masks, they don't want vaccine mandates, but you're going to mandate the right to bear a child? Like, which is such a huge decision, especially if you make mistakes, especially if you're raped, especially if you have health conditions, they have this new science where you can see the chromosomes if the child isn't going to be healthy. Like I would want to be able to have the decision to proceed with that lifestyle or not. So
It's
yeah,
a very difficult lifestyle to have to shuttle your child back and forth, whether it's, aiding them in certain things. And I can tell you, like, with my son having ADHD and being diagnosed from the time he was 9 until now in adulthood, um, I had to forego a lot of different things, and there's a lot of times where I had to spend at Kaiser and UC Davis learning
mm-hmm.
about this ailment and where it's deriving from. And okay, is my son who has this severe case of ADHD and anxiety, depression, and he's on medication, is my grandchild, if he chooses to have
Mm-hmm.
a child, going to have the same ailments? And how is my
Mm-hmm.
son and then his partner, are they going to be able to handle this if they're together or not together? I feel like those are all these different. So for every decision, there's a different consequence or result that comes with it. And so who are we to tell somebody that, whether it's statistical analysis or not, like I'm not in no position to tell you, Stacey, you can or cannot have a child, because there's so many things that go in that are involved with it. And
Yeah.
again,
And that's you, because I think a lot of men would want to tell women, have that
it,
dominance, you
I think
know?
that, like, that all goes down to obviously who the company you keep as well, right? On a personal side, like I don't have those people in my lives that aren't necessarily progressive thinkers or thinking about the other individual in a situation as a human being. I
Yeah.
think the majority
Think of
of my,
those toxic masculine type dudes, or, the alpha dudes.
I don't, I don't reside with those kind of cats. Those types of people aren't in my circle, and generally are very low level acquaintances in my life. So I can't really speak to
Yeah.
like any type of personal interactions I've had on a high level of that. The majority of my friends and the people that I'm with, um, generally have same viewpoints and view plans of things. Like
Hmm.
we're off on some things, but when it comes to stuff like this, I think that all of them would believe in the correct manner. And again,
Yeah.
it's a
But we're
person.
in a world where people aren't rational. They
Well,
have their
that's a
extreme
whole other
views
show about common sense and rationality, right?
and
And
radical, like they're extremists and
mhm,
they're imposing their beliefs on us. And like that's just what we're living through right now, basically.
yeah,
Um, you
it's
know?
a very open ended, type style topic, because again, with abortion, um, there are still rapes. There are still abusive domestic violence type relationships and homes where, um, a man may impose his will on a woman to have the child and the woman didn't want the child, or vice versa. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many things that come with all of this. And how do you quantify it, right? How do you actually hit the problem? Well, I believe the problem is individualized into that own person's home and what their systematic belief is on the subject. Like, I don't want to impose certain radical behaviors or certain thought processes on another human being, because every human being should have that civil liberty to make a choice and a decision about their own body.
Right. And right now it's based on what state you live in. But if, this conservative party gets in office, it's going to be a federal ban. And they're already like making things extremely difficult with restrictive laws, for different women, depending on what state you live in, like Texas, Florida, or some of the like southern states. It's like, I think you can't have some are even really cutthroat where you can't even have an abortion if you were raped, or if you notice there's something wrong with the child, or if it could cause harm to yourself, they won't let you get an abortion. In some places, if you get an abortion, they're giving you like 99 years in prison. Like, it's crazy what's happening right now. And that's why I really wanted to do this show, is because people need to realize, like, elections have consequences. And by us allowing Trump to get in office, he stacked the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court was able to overturn Roe versus Wade. And that's just where we are right now. Like, we're these are the consequences of getting people in office who have different beliefs, or in beliefs where they want to impose their will on us through the government. And it's not right. It's wrong. It's scary. So we just have to be aware of that.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
what are your
at the
views?
state level,
Yeah.
even, we have
Well,
to vote better and get people in office that are in line with your
I
beliefs.
feel like, and I should have talked about this 2 weeks ago when we did the whole, political thing. I feel like when we first started voting at 18, right? This is 1999 when we all turned 18. And if I'm not mistaken, that next year we had an election. So we were able to vote. We were able to vote citywide, countywide. We had voting. Don't you feel like you have to actually do your own research, because that research is no longer being shown? Like, the accessibility of the research just via the mainstream is, again, more opinionated than it is factual based. And where we could, I felt like when I was younger as a voter, or as somebody who wanted to make change or believed my vote mattered, right? In a sense, like, measures, especially, like, I always look at measures, right?
Yeah.
Because things that really matter, in our city, and
Mm-hmm.
things we deal with, that we had more insight and detail via town halls, information that you could pick up, pamphlets that you could read, kind
And
of.
so many people don't even go to those things, though.
Yeah, they don't pay attention to that type of stuff because our daily lives are made to,
Not pay attention.
well, it's a distraction
Yeah.
from what we're trying to do, because so many people are living check to check and in day to day, that you're not really looking at the grand scheme of, hey, your decision making on this ballot truly affects hundreds of thousands or even millions of people, you know.
I
Um,
think they don't want a lot of us to vote because a lot of people are more progressive in thought.
hell, that's a fucking given. Like, not having certain turnouts of
Mm-hmm.
the vote,
The voter suppression. Yeah.
yeah, really doesn't even quantify in a sense of what people's really beliefs are. Like, I don't necessarily think all of these elections truly bring forth what the actual masses are thinking.
Mm-mm.
I see it on a daily basis when somebody has a problem, right? Like, instead of coming to the main source in my own business, right? Like, are you coming to me, or are you just going to another parent to get the information? Like, for me, I'm a source guy. I was always taught to go to the source, ask the hard. Whether you like the result or the answer that you're going to receive, you have to still ask the hard, you have to do the hard. And I think a lot of people err on the side of not, because they're not going to get the answer they may or may not want, and it's an emotional maturity type deal, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
With kids, just abortion in its own right, like, I don't know, man, there's a lot of people who do have kids that shouldn't have kids, in my opinion. I see it, but I'm not to tell
Yeah.
them. That's not my place to tell them, like, you shouldn't have that child. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not that person. But there are people in places that have children or have done things that probably shouldn't, but maybe didn't even have a choice or an option to not, or
Mm-hmm.
felt like they didn't. I know a lot of people who feel certain ways about certain laws and things like that, where they do have a choice in the matter, but they feel like they don't because they may not be educated in it, or the law is so skewed in its writing or just how it's presented that I remember a measure a couple years. It was Obama's second term. It was a local one, and it was like it was so confusing to me that I had to leave it blank. And it
Yeah.
was one that I hadn't really studied or looked at, but I had to leave it blank because it felt like the yes answer was wrong and the no answer was wrong too.
Yeah. And what's scary is because I actually go through those measures now
Mhm.
and look for the research. Like I get online, I read about them, sometimes they'll give you the pamphlets that tell you the pros and cons of each one. But if you get online and you look into these different measures, there's not a lot of info on it.
No, it's skeleton like, and so
Yeah.
if I'm voting yes to something that feels like a no on something, do you see where I'm at now? I'm like, ooh, this is not good. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't
And-
know which way
yeah,
to go.
right. So now I kind of go towards who's endorsing what as a platform. The Democratic platform or the conservative platform. I see what they're endorsing and then kind of go off of that. That helps me.
Way, I mean, that's a smart way to go about things. I think we're so skewed in our thought processes nowadays because it's like you're either this, or this. And I don't like boxing people in. I don't like feeling boxed in either. I don't know anybody who wants to feel like they have to make a choice or a decision right away on something that takes time,
Yeah.
and every
7 day
single,
rule.
yeah, well, every single decision that we do make, whether it's in acting fast or quickly or taking our time to deliberate and actually think about it, we all do know that there's consequences and repercussions for every decision that we make daily, you know, and whether they're positive or negative, we have to figure out, okay, in the long run, I think in our generation, we have struggled with that with a lot of people that I know struggle with the long term decision making because it sometimes is a fear of missing out, you know.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that discipline and sacrifice for sure. And a lot of people just don't realize like the importance of vision and just seeing what's happening, like pay attention like to what's around you. Like an example, how we were talking the other day, where as people get older, you want somebody to be there for you that's going to take care of you when you can't take care of yourself,
yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
That's
So, but people just don't think about these things. Like people just, I don't know what it is. Like, I mean,
I'm
the
telling
fear of missing
you,
out, but you're not going to miss out on anything.
life is fucking lifing, and life is hard right now.
It
Life
really
is harder than
is.
it's ever been.
Yeah.
Fuck,
And that's,
if
yeah.
I
And that's why this next, oh, sorry.
it's $130 for 6 items at Target. Fucking life's lifing. It's hard, hard. So I just,
People don't
and
even have time to think outside of anything other than their own life,
because
I think.
a lot of times, a lot of these things, the nuances of sex and dating and hookup culture and marriage, things like that, are all escapes from the reality.
And
And
substance abuse, yeah.
fuck it, that's a huge thing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, how
And that's
many
expensive.
how many people are leaving the club, having sex, and then all of a sudden they have a baby? Shit, it was
Yeah.
even getting insecure, right? He was in a relationship. That relationship, he had broke up with her, right? Later seasons, breaks up with her. She comes back 2 months later, she's pregnant. But he's in a whole nother relationship now with his ex, Issa, right? And then that
Mhm.
affects that new relationship. Like, how many times is just in Black culture does that happen? In our culture, do we see that happening? Where it's like, I went from one, I went to the other, and now this one is telling me I have a baby. Like, fuck. Now I've completely destroyed a
Or STD.
well, yeah, or a good portion of our planning, especially in a new stage of relationship or trying to rekindle something that was previous. And let's say you took a break from your dude, right? But the dude that you were just previously with, now you're pregnant and now you're trying to rekindle this whole thing. And that kind of puts a monkey wrench in a lot of what your initial planning was. And it's going to take a lot.
And the strength of the man to want to be with you have when you're pregnant with another man's baby, like that would be wild. And people do that. People
Happen
do that, you know?
all the time.
That takes a strong man for sure.
It takes a strong man to help want to be around a woman who already has kids in an established situation with their baby's dads, or just one or two or three, whatever it may be. I don't know, but it does take a strong individual to have to now deal with other personalities that are now involved in their relationship with the person they actually love and care about.
Enter in polygamy.
As a
But like people are going there now, you know what I mean? Like they're bringing
I
that
think a
back.
lot of people are going that route, one of two ways. It's either the pleasure route or it's the economical aspect of it.
Yeah.
The economics make sense because you see homes of other cultures, Asian culture, Indian culture, where the homes a lot more,
Multifamily.
yeah. And that's how you can gain financial freedom and, kind of persevere financially, right? And, financial freedom creates time, space, and leisure, right? And so you can look at it from that standpoint. I also look at it more of a kind of what we talked about with the Diddy thing. It's a pleasure principle, right? A lot of these people are erring on the side of their pleasures as opposed to the actual principle of being grounded in a foundational piece or an ideology piece of their
Because it's
spirituality.
boring. Like people don't like that straight and narrow path. It's it's boring. It's not very exciting, but you do live in a state of peace. There's a lot more peace,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still lots of lessons to be
Yeah,
learned.
like
But
peace.
there's
A lot of people like conflict.
like what?
I think a lot of
Oh,
people.
conflict. Well, yeah, okay. So like I've always said, crisis is inevitable. Like we're always gonna have some type of crisis in our life. But drama is avoidable. And that's
Yeah,
more so to what comes down to our choices, like internal decisions, factors versus external factors that you have no control over. So we can avoid a lot of drama in life by making decisions. But I also think people don't even know the fundamentals of some, you know, foundational, like how you should be to like navigate through life. But then that's also imposing your life on others because other people they just want to live in the moment.
they're not going to feel the same way you feel about any of it.
Right. So it's like we just can't we you really like I'm really at a place where we can't impose our beliefs on others because people are going to believe radically different than you
For
and
sure.
their goals like everybody's goals are different in life,
Yeah.
but that's why I say make it civil, make
Yeah.
laws civil, give people free will to do whatever they want. They want an abortion, they don't want an abortion, make it an option at least
Mm-hmm.
because some people like they've been having abortions since ancient times. People wanted, they've been doing it. They're going to do it. Even with these, if they make a federal ban, people are still going to get abortions.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
thing is, they're not going to be as safe. Like you're taking away the safety of a medical clinic or facility for
You know,
these women.
governing and government funded, and things like that. And those types
Yeah.
of measures are important too.
Abortions are expensive. Like I had no idea.
Every medical procedure nowadays is expensive.
Dude,
Everything.
right. So, like they literally have, how they have scholarship funds for school, they have abortion funds,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just crazy. And one thing I did see that this does affect Black women more.
Oh,
Yeah, like a lot of Black women, and minorities, I'll just say minorities, which are women, are being affected by this law, but
and
mostly. And
a lot of ways I look at this is a direct attack on that. And what has it always been an attack on? You got to remember that too. You
yeah,
really remember that we
but
were
it also makes us, for me, it makes us look at ourselves as a community and as a culture.
1960s not that far away.
The
It is.
what?
I said the 1960s is not that far off in
Mm,
progressive years of change and how much change we've experienced since the 80s, you know, and
yeah. And one thing I did notice that in the 90s, I think was the highest rates for abortions. It was like in the millions.
you know,
Huh?
the crack epidemic, coke,
Oh,
crack, weed,
yeah.
the things were very prevalent in the streets and rampant. And so I think you had a generation of 20 somethings that were very free spirited in a sense. It was almost like the late 60s, right? Where it was just free love, free spirit. Yeah, man, that kind of shit. In just a different formulated aspect of it, and more of it being in the hip hop culture and the lyrics and the devaluing of the woman in our music and things of that nature. And you know, words do matter. Let's put it that way.
They do. Yeah. Hip hop is extremely influential, but the rates have gone down. So that's good. But they're still high. They're like in the
A
600,000s.
lot more like my son. I take my youngest son, for instance, and his friends and things like that. And I look at them and shit, he didn't drive till he was 18, which is fine. I didn't really care, but a lot of it was because it was just accessibility. Like he always knew he had a ride, so he didn't need a ride. Like, so I look at some of their decisions and how they do things or how they go about their business, and I'm very uh, observant of how he operates, even. And it's like he's not who I was, and I'm happy for that because as a parent, I didn't want him to make the same mistakes that I made,
Right.
and it's not saying he's a mistake, but this is a kind of a misstep in what my progression of being an athlete, going to school, being paid to go to school, and that my education is being taken care of, and now I'm trying to do this professionally and all these other things, and it kind of derailed certain things on that, right? And so when those things are derailed from you as a parent, I'm speaking in parent terms, I don't want that for my child. I want my child to have his civil liberties and his freedom of thinking about what it is he really does want. And I'll be
Mhm.
supportive of whatever decision he makes. I
Right.
may have some apprehensions, I may have some questions, but all in all, I just want him to be a fundamentally sound, independent thinker, and then also learn how to be a collaborative worker. And when you're taking those types of civil liberties away, like abortion, like freedom of choice, freedom to do what I want to do with my body, I feel like it's just like a crime on humanity.
Yeah. Like we're going back to the 20s, 50s, whatever, because
It's
this
not
is
going to.
the first time in I don't know what since 1973 where we haven't had to deal with these types of issues as
Yeah.
far as abortion rights go. So he may be in a world where we have no abortions won't be acceptable. It won't be his choice and it could, you
I hope
know,
for our listeners they can understand, like, if you really truly believe in it, then get out there and make it happen, right? And whether you believe in it or you don't, you know, make whatever one that you feel is to happen. But at the end of the day, like, really truly think about it in a human aspect, you know.
Yeah.
And I try to make decisions based on that when it comes to this type of stuff. It's a human thing. It's a human, like, I don't ever want to tell another human what he or she can and cannot do. It's kind of why I've never wanted to be in a front office or scout in my profession, because I don't want to be the end all end to a young man's dreams. You know, I think that that's very, very hard to do, to be judge, jury, and executioner of somebody's belief system. So,
Yeah, and you have to persevere past that sometime. And a lot of people don't. They'll just be like, oh, well, he cut off my dreams. I'm not good enough, or, let me just let this baseball dream go. But then there might be other people who will be like, will persevere through it. But
yeah.
it's not many people. Like, it's hard. It's hard if you don't have support. We know
I'll
that.
say this on my last thing: fucking vote, get out, make your voice heard. Um,
Know what these people are representing.
and I commend people who do share their beliefs, whether I believe in them or not. I do commend people for that, because it's bravery. There's a bravery aspect to sharing your beliefs about gun control, about abortion, about politics, things of that nature. Um, I'm a little, more conservative on that front, like I told you when we did the whole political thing episode. But at the end of the day, like, I struggled today posting um about Juneteenth. And it's not about Juneteenth in its own right. It's just I follow an account that uses a term of endearment between us as Black people that other people might not understand why that's being posted. But I feel some type of way when I read it, because I'm not looking at it as that word being a negative word. I'm looking at that term as a term of endearment from that particular person on his account. And I follow it, and I believe in the things that they're posting, and I believe in their sanctity of their, IG and what they're, putting out in the world. And so some people might look at it in a negative. Um, I don't believe that to be the case. And I think that that's with anything that I would ever post or things like that. If I'm going to post it, I believe in it, and that's just me. And whether somebody judges me on that or not, that's on them.
Yeah.
I'm on the side of, do you like me or not? Like, you're going to respect me for who I am and what I do and the words that I say. And do I follow those words? You know, do I follow up on them? Am I a good person in that regard? And that's the ultimate sign of character. I don't think it's a character flaw. I think that there's so many different things that are just different in today's world that I think a lot of people have a hard time with change.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think it's good that everybody shares their beliefs. I love differences, in different cultures and stuff. And I also, I know I believe in free speech and all that stuff. And I know there's been a lot of censorship. But it's, what am I trying to, like, I believe that it's a good thing. But dang, I just lost my thought. Sorry, guys. I'll have to edit that part out.
I love you.
I know, no, but like censorship, like it's fine, but I think that we should have a whole, like people should just be able to believe what they want to believe, as long as it doesn't cause violence, as long as it doesn't make you want to like go out and fight people and hold a sign and protest talking about, because I know you've seen them, those people that are like, Jesus saves, and just very violent in their beliefs, and making others try to believe what they believe through violence. Like that's where I kind of draw the line, but I do respect everyone's belief,
Mhm.
everyone. And with Elon Musk and Twitter and how he was trying to take over Twitter to bring freedom of speech back, and I think people should be able to say what they want as long as it doesn't incite violence. That's where I kind of draw the line. And that's what our amendment and constitution says. you know, because you can have free speech, but there's consequences for that speech, you know? So I
But
don't know. So I do
that is
believe in beliefs.
hypocrisy at its greatest form. So,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
been cool too. So I
Right.
appreciate
Yeah, no, I appreciate you too. We covered a lot. That's good.
you. Yeah, we did. And I love you for it. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Talk to you later. Thanks for listening, guys.